Good afternoon, chairs and members of the Judiciary. My name is Joshua Serafino. I own Lock N Load Firearms in Southington. I'm a federally licensed firearms dealer and a certified firearms instructor. Through my business, I work with hundreds of thousands of students, residents, every year who are going through the legal process to obtain their pistol permits and learn how to operate firearms safely. Today I'm here in opposition of HB5043 and 5436 because both these bills create significant unintended consequences for law-abiding gun owners, firearm retailers, and small businesses like mine that are trying to operate within the law. Starting with 5043, this bill proposes banning manufacture and sale of so-called convertible pistols. In reality, the language of the bill targets one of the most commonly widely owned handgun designs in the United States, Glocks. These are the same firearms that are used by law-abiding citizens every day for self-defense, instructors for training, and law enforcement agencies across the country, including the Connecticut State Police. It's also important to point out that the devices used to illegally convert these semi-automatic pistols into machine guns are already illegal under federal law and under existing Connecticut law. This bill doesn't close a loophole. Instead, it attempts to ban a commonly owned firearm that has been in production since 1982 based on a theoretical possibility that somebody could illegally modify them. This doesn't target criminals, it targets law-abiding gun owners. HB 5436 raises different concern, but just as problematic. Connecticut would redefine what are major firearm components, redefine what calls major firearm components such as barrel slides and cylinders. Under federal law, the only part of the firearm that is serialized is the frame or the receiver, and that is defined by the ATF. Barrels and slides are not serialized and are commonly replaced for maintenance or repairs. Just like any mechanical device, require replacement parts over time. If these parts were subtly treated as firearms under Connecticut law, routine things like replacing a worn barrel, installing a new slide, or performing basic gunsmithing could legally be unclear for both the owners and the licensed dealers. Connecticut already has some of the most complex firearm laws in the country. Adding new definitions to this not only conflict with federal laws, but makes it just confusing for the general public to understand. The people I work with every day go through background checks, fingerprinting, training, and a lengthy pistol permit process to exercise a constitutional right. They are not the people committing violent crimes in our state. For these reasons, I urge the committee to oppose both of those bills. And on one side note, just on previous testimony, they've stated that 1,200 rounds per minute is what they claim a Glock switch can do. That statistic is from Every Town for Gun Safety, which is, they're referencing their own statistic. An M240 Bravo, which is a belt-fed machine gun that the U.S. military uses, fires 650 rounds per minute. So I find that a little implausible. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Veach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice to see you, Josh. Thanks for coming out today. I've got a quick question for you, if I may. You're a small business owner, one of my constituents. What does this do to somebody like you? I mean, this type of a, law, should it pass?
Yeah, so if you guys and the legislative body ends up basically banning Glocks here, significantly hurts my business, just like HB 6667 did when we banned CT others. That was about 25% of my business, and that hurt financially, and it hurts for my family because that's how I make my money, my income. I know, I believe it was Rep. Dubitsky earlier asked somebody how many Glocks are sold in the state of Connecticut, and while I can't speak to that, I have access to my federal book here, how I do all my paperwork. I did a quick search and it only pulled up the maximum amount that it'll pull up without me being at the store, but I've sold over 1,000 Glocks in the 5 years I've been in business. And I'm a small business, so that's a significant portion of the income. And it's a significant, Glocks are a major firearm brand that a lot of people use for self-defense.
I have to agree with you. All three of my girls actually carry Glocks and got them from their father, who's a police officer.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming out, appreciate your advocacy and working hard to make the point clear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. thank you for coming out. Now, you're you operate a gun store?
Yes,
Are you the owner?
yes,
And you're also a firearms instructor?
yes.
All right. Do you have any idea of, and the students that you teach,
Mhm.
why do they come to learn how to get instruction?
So we teach anyone and everyone, very wide demographic, and a lot of them do it for personal safety. This is not my quote, this is something I've heard in the past, but you are your own first responder. You call 911 for the aftermath, right? That's why you have a fire extinguisher, hopefully in your kitchen, right? So it takes a long time for the police departments to get to your house, especially in rural parts of Connecticut. And even in Southington, we're a pretty large town, but it can certainly take some time. And waiting for somebody to go and defend me it could cost you. And most people get their permits to go for self-protection.
Okay. And those that are there to get firearms instruction that is not for self-protection, what's the purpose of their instruction?
Some is recreational, they just want to go to the range with their friends. And then some are hunting. Some people have had their permits lapse and they need to go through the training again. And some never knew, they're a little bit older, gun laws were passed, they had no idea they needed a pistol permit to buy ammunition, and now they're sitting in the class to go and do that because they can't buy any more shotgun ammo for field and skeet shooting.
Okay. And of your students, how long have you been training?
Been teaching for 9 years. I've had the retail store for about 5.5 years.
Okay, so during the time that you were a trainer, what percentage of your students do you think used Glocks or a firearm similar to a Glock?
A significant amount. The two most selling brands out of my store are SIGs and Glocks, and it's very equal on that. But a lot of them like it because of the simplistic aspect to it. I think Rep. Fishbein mentioned them earlier. They're not the prettiest looking gun out there, but they function very easily. They're easy to take apart. They're easy to clean, and it's one of the reasons they're the most common handgun out there.
Now, you say you have a wide demographic.
Yep.
What's the demographic generally?
Great people from all over. I think a lot of people think that a gun store, you're kind of like in your general area, but I've gotten students and customers from every corner of the state, from every part of the state, from every town, or probably every town or city of the state, and out-of-state residents too. They come in to get a non-resident permit.
Men and women?
Yeah,
Both?
of course. So,
Now, as a FFL holder, what is the process when you get a firearm that comes into the store?
yeah. So, like for ordering from a wholesaler.
Yeah.
Okay. So order from the wholesaler. Once it arrives, we have to put it in our bound book, our A&D log. So we manufacturer, model, serial number, caliber, and then the FFL, who it came from. That gets logged in there. It's tagged for sale. And then it is out in the case for display. Once somebody comes in to go and buy it, they want to buy, say, a Glock 19. We take a copy of their pistol permit, their driver's license. We have an electronic system. It makes my life easier, makes the ATF's life easier. When they came in and did an audit, I think it was about 8 months ago. Perfect audit, which was very nice. And they go and do the 4473, the federal paperwork on a computer. They submit that to us. We check it over. We then run a background check with the Connecticut State Police through the SLFU, get an authorization number for their background check. Sometimes people get either temporarily denied. Sometimes they have a longer hold on that. That was mentioned earlier. Once they're clear, we finish up the paperwork, give them their Youth Handgun Safety Act in there, go over everything, and check them out.
Tell me about this bound book.
So we have an electronic bound book. It used to be called a bound book because it was a physical bound book. And we're in 2026. I like to use computers. It makes my life a lot easier. But that is the federal log that is required by the ATF on where a gun came in from and who it went out to. And the matching 4473 that goes with that.
Okay, and how would that system work with this bound book if every barrel and grip and slide was considered a firearm?
I have no idea, and that is certainly concerning. They are not serialized items. They are not regulated by the ATF. My only hypothesis is that the state would have to come up with some sort of system, and I think us as gun owners know how well that doesn't work. Going to 6667 again, which was the CT other ban, many of us, law-abiding gun owners, filed their registrations for our assault weapon certificates, and that has, the paper ones I heard are about 90-ish% complete, and the electronics are barely touched. That was passed June 6, 2023. We're in March of 2026, and the state is severely lagging behind. And I'm not blaming the SLFU by any means. They only have so much money in their budget and can do things, but I think the legislative body as a whole needs to think about what the state side, the SLFU and state police need to do to make whatever you guys pass actually applicable. So,
Okay.
But going back to your point, I have no idea what the ATF could do or how I could accomplish that paperwork.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So when the legislature passed an assault weapons ban, what year was that?
June 6, 2023, HB5043 was signed into law.
2023, so that's 3 years ago.
Correct.
That required that people register certain firearms.
Yeah, I believe it was by, I think, May 1st, April 30th of 2024.
Okay, so approximately 2 years ago was a deadline to register them.
Correct.
And SLFU was supposed to process those registrations and notify people that they had, they'd been processed.
Correct.
And you're saying that many of those are still not processed after 2 years?
Correct. None of mine have been processed, for examples. I submitted all of mine, and 0 of them have come back to me. I know of plenty of other people probably sitting in this very audience that is in the exact same boat.
Okay, so am I interpreting this correctly? Your fear is that the same thing would happen if you put an additional burden on SLFU to try to regulate every barrel, slide, frame, and grip?
Correct. 100%. Because in my opinion, there's no way to do it on a federal level because the ATF does not define those as firearms.
Now, how would you deal with unserialized pieces? Barrel doesn't have a serial number very often. Sometimes a slide doesn't. Certainly a upper receiver wouldn't have one. Sometimes a lower receiver would. Sometimes it's on trigger assembly. How would you deal with something that was unserialized?
Currently, they're just parts, right? You as a person can go and order them online. Some retailers will ship them to you, some won't. It depends on their internal policies. But there's no, currently there's no requirements for that. I think maybe an alternative to this is kind of, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I could, accept a middle ground here is making sure they have a pistol permit, right? You guys did that with body armor a couple years ago. Maybe that's a middle ground. But there's no regulation for them right now. So you could mail them to your house.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Comment or question from other members of the committee? Comment or question from other members? There are none. Thank you very much for joining us. Sorry about mixing that up in the beginning.